at the beginning there is that moment that you don't know if you're actually going live, so you're just staring at the screen, and yeah. So I guess right now we're in this kind of moment.
That's my favorite part. This moment right here. You can say everything you want to regret.
Okay, let's see. It says it's still
We will know shortly.
Yeah, let's see.
I assume just get started and be like, you know what? I believe in myself. It's going to work.
Yeah. Oh, okay. On Twitch we're live, which is cool. And yeah, yeah, we're also live on YouTube.
Excellent.
And I think I'm getting your audio through. Try to talk a little bit.
Hey, everybody. My name is Gant Laborde. You can find me on Twitter at Gant Laborde.
Yeah.
So it's not just a witty name.
Yeah, I think it's getting through. Okay, so cool. Let's start then. And yeah, so wait a sec. Now I'm not hearing you.
Well, I don't think I'm saying anything.
Ah, okay. Oh man, it's no. The funny thing is, on that screen, I have the Zoom, which is like the regular one, and then I have two streams.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, you're saying something, but I'm not hearing you because of the delay. Okay, let me.
What a lucky man! You've got my face all over the place now.
Yeah, like Nick Cage face for your AI thing, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, so let me close this really quick and
sounds good.
Yeah. Let me try the chat thing. Yeah, okay, and chat is working, my monitors, and cool. So, yeah, we'll start, and welcome everyone to the stream. We are here with Gant Laborde. We'll be talking about tips of like working on like remote working and all this kind of stuff. So, Gant, can you introduce yourself?
Hey, everybody. I'm Gant Laborde. I am the CIO of Infinite Red, a company that's been remote for a long time, since the beginning on one side, and then when two companies merged, 100% remote for that. And we have been, we wrote the remote work handbook, which I have on my desk right here, just fantastic. We work remotely constantly, and we train teams on React Native, and how to actually get some projects done remote style.
Cool. That sounds perfect. Actually, right now your face kind of shrinked in this monitor, so sorry about that.
I'm shrinking.
Yeah,
That's another facet of one of the things I'm really good at. By the way, I drink something, I eat something, I grow, I shrink. It works.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry for all the like technical issues here. I'm still trying to figure out.
Vlad is our cameraman, our host, our technical streamer, all at the same time. So
yeah, I'm trying to like stream to 5 platforms at the same time. Like actually,
on what it is, because it's difficult for some people, to work remote, and it's also important that they've been working remote for at least 6 months. So if you're feeling a little bit, it's week 1, week 2, you were thinking that by day 3 you'd have this all figured out. Surprise. Remote work doesn't work like that. We generally want to see somebody work remote for 6 months before we know that they've got a standard. Because one of the things is, for the first bit, you can't even form a good habit because you don't know what a good remote working habit is. And I think that that's kind of key here, is that first thing you want to do is you want to identify what works for you and what's sort of expected for your remote communication, and set those up as goals. You don't have to accomplish them right away. If you want to wake up every morning and get dressed and take a shower and pretend you're going to work, and then clock in at 8 or 9 o'clock, and that's what you want to do, Set it up as a goal. It's just like a diet, right? If
Yeah.
one bad weekend doesn't erase everything. So I say the same thing with remote work. Right before this broadcast, my daughter, who is 8 months old, just had a complete blowout diaper. And you have to understand, like, people who know remote work understand these things. It's very acceptable. It's understandable. I love that video where people are like busting in the
Yeah.
background.
I have it all the
I
time with my kids. Yeah.
I think that that's the great part. Like, we set a different expectation. I think the real difficulty comes in two things. One, not setting up your personal expectations, and two, setting your personal expectations to make homework exactly like in office or as I like to call it, commute work. They're not the same. The
Yeah.
standards are the same. Some pieces come over and some pieces don't. I like it when I'm in a meeting and I get to see somebody's cat and I get to see somebody's daughter or something. So I really enjoy interacting with people in a much more human way, because we are remote. I'm not going to be right next to people. So taking those extra moments with, having a conversation like we are now and having fun, figuring
Yeah.
out if we're broadcasting on multiple platforms, this is fun. This is exactly what I see as a real goal for remote work.
Yeah, that's kind of sounds awesome, but like let me share something like with the for example, when I started working remotely, it was like
Hmm.
what, like 4 years ago, something like that. The main problem at first that I encountered, and I'm pretty sure lots of people are encountering this problem right now.
Hmm.
When their family and their loved ones are not like understanding them working, right? Like you in your office,
Yeah.
like if you lucky enough to have this office, and sometimes you just in your
Hmm.
kitchen or living room and trying to work, right? And your
Right.
loved ones are like, "Oh, you're not working, please, like do chores and stuff like that." And then you figure out that like your boss is pissed off because you're not working like the same way that you expected you to do, right? So like, how do you manage
Hmm.
with setting boundaries for your loved ones without like
Yeah.
getting into like arguments and yeah, like what's your tip for that?
Well, I'll say that I'm going to explain it in a way that people who aren't familiar with remote work will understand. And I think that you're sitting at work, you just came back from maybe you got like an extra long lunch or whatever, and you're sitting back there, you were getting stuff done. And let's say it's about 2 p.m., sorry, 1400 o'clock. And you're starting to get really tired. And because you're at work, you have to sit at your desk, you have to sit in your cube, and you have to look very productive. You don't have any meetings or any work or anything kind of coming up, but you have to sit there and you just have to like kind of die in that chair with your eyes open a little bit. And I think that we've all felt that if you've worked at one of those kinds of offices. And the truth is, on the other side of that, as a remote worker, you get to sort of like take a nap, you get to relax, but that only works as long as you are in control of your schedule. So I'd say that you have bursts where you have meetings, you have productivity, and you have, these heads down moments, or you have interactions that you have to worry about. Those you have to put aside. You have to like sort of let everybody know it's about communication. Before I had this, I went ahead and I let everybody know in the house that one, the door is getting closed, and two, try to keep all noise to a minimum. That lets everybody know that I'm pretty serious. And I think that sort of sets a framework. And that frame is as strong as you make it. But at the same time, it allows me to control it. So on the other side, the sort of analogy I was saying for people who are at work, if you need to take a break, if it's just not working for you, go take a break, go take a walk, go kind of like leave and leave your work behind and get a refresher. Maybe after a coffee and a power nap, you're right back to kicking butt. And so you control that. But when the light's on and the doors closed and you're recording, make those very significant and very obvious. And then when you're off, be off. be completely off. Let everybody know this is my off time. You're getting this because it's remote work. And I think that's one of the benefits. So it's two sides of the same coin. If you're used to being in an office, you know those times where you're just kind of suffering.
Yeah.
You don't have to do those. But when you are working, when you are focused, and you have that blistering, intensive sort of focus, use those times and then really make sure everybody respects them. For me, I thought about putting a red light out the door like a recording studio, but it turns out just communicating when my meetings are and when I need these times is enough.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good point. Like to setting up kind of framework with your loved ones,
Mm-hmm.
and especially with yourself, right? Because it's really easy to get into mode of like overworking, right? And I see
Yeah.
lots of people are doing it right now. Like let's say if you work from the office and you have the commute, let's say it takes an hour to get to work, so like typically you
Mm-hmm.
have like 2 hours of commute, like
Mm-hmm.
each way. And it's something I had, right? Like 2 hours a day I spend on nothing, literally, like just like getting to work, and then
Mm-hmm.
you working for what, like 8 hours. And let's
Yeah.
be honest, you have coffee with your colleagues in the kitchen, and you chat and so on, and like you have something like five, six at most effective hours of work, right? And
Yeah.
that's for what, for like 10 hours of actual time that you spend. And add to that like 1 hour of preparation to go to work, and 1 hour getting back, and so on. So effectively you're working for like 6 hours out of 11 hours that you spend,
Yeah.
which is kind of weird, right? Now, whenever you start working remotely, you
Mm-hmm.
feeling so much productive. Like you spend like this time on, and you work, and you like finish all these tasks, and you're like so happy about that. And then it's easy to get to the point that you're working like 12, 13, 14 hours
Yeah.
pretty easily, and without like setting this kind of framework, you're like, oh my god, I'm doing like so much stuff, right, in the same amount of
Mm-hmm.
time. But it's really important to like respect your own time as well, right?
It's so important because what you just said there, you hit the nail right on the head. You could have all 10, 12 hours and have it be basically the same effect of 5 to 6 serious hours,
Yeah.
right? People, the gas expands to fill the chamber. I think it's like, what is it? Some principle, your time expands to fill whatever time you're supposed to use, right?
Yeah.
And it's about respecting time and respecting each other's time. And if someone's not doing that, simply enough, then your framework's not going to hold up. One little trick that my our CEO taught us is, hey, just say my boss needs me to do this, and for some reason everybody just starts to understand or agree with that. It's like, oh, I have this meeting, it's really important, my boss needs me to go, so I need it to be quiet. And then all of a sudden it's not even your framemaker anymore. People
Yeah.
just kind of respect authority. So you could throw that out there even if your boss isn't the one calling the meeting.
Yeah, that actually works. And yeah, sometimes like when you, especially right now when I need to, like kids are not going to schools because of quarantine, and
Yeah.
so on. So I actually have like a punching bag, like heavy punching bag, that I just put in front of the door because they just don't respect any boundaries anymore. So it's just like, it's like 17 kilos, which is like what, 140 labels, 130 labels, something like
Yeah,
that, right?
you've barricaded yourself in. So
Yeah.
you have all the toilet paper and the groceries,
Yeah.
and then barricade. Yeah, I
Yeah.
see what's happening. It's smart.
I mean, it works, right? So it's another
True.
trick. So you can barricade yourself, and yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, the important part is not to like fall into these like constant working routine, because at some point you will
Hmm.
be like exhausted. At some point, the time management works as soon as, and I really liked what you said about the fact that whenever you like off work, you need to be
Hmm.
like, you don't need to be on Twitter, you don't need to be like
Yeah.
on like Slack, and so on. If you're not working, you're not working. And it's really how to do that whenever you're at home and your home routine is like remote work, you're at home all the time.
Hmm.
And Yeah, that's pretty tough not to be on Slack. And then at first year when I worked remotely, it was pretty hard because my wife was always
Yeah.
like, you constantly on Slack, like stop that, like you just eat your dinner on while like messaging people on Slack. And you have these excuse that my boss told me to do something, and then accidentally you're like working 13, 14 hours a day. uh,
Mhm.
yeah, but
Yeah,
yeah,
Vlad, you're kind of like you. There are two types of people that we see when they start remote work. There are the people who, when they first start remote work, because they don't have the visual cues, they're a reactive person. And so a reactive person doesn't get the cue that they're normally expecting. They leave the office to go do something, and the next thing they know, they lost the entire evening, but they got a whole bunch of like groceries done and other things.
yeah,
So as a reactive person, they need more frame to help get them in there and then sort of respect their work time. And as a proactive person, there's the other danger, which I think is what you're specifically talking about. Whereas, everywhere is a workspace now.
yeah,
You have no sacred spaces. And if you don't have sacred spaces, your lunch is getting cold, your dinner is getting cold, you're checking Slack. And this is what happens to a lot of entrepreneurs, especially when they're first starting out, because the harder you work, the more rewards you get. I think that if you're a proactive person, you have to constantly test the barrier of saying, I'm going to make this wait and see if the world falls apart. Like, I'll just get to
yeah.
this tomorrow morning. And then if you get up tomorrow morning and everybody's like, yeah, that's fine. Then you realized that you were your own worst enemy and kind of working yourself into midnight or something. So I think that pushing, I'm gonna dare say that common that trope. It's all about finding the balance. And so if you find yourself on one side, you've got to find the things that push you one way. And if you find yourself overworked, you have to find those sacred spaces. You have to say, let me experiment with not actually having this tonight and see how things go. And I think that's really good because, you know, um, we really promote high personal support at Infinite Red. Being a fully remote company, it's key that we actually have these human conversations and that we help each other balance. So I think that that's one of the great things, like what you're doing right here with
Yeah.
this video broadcast, is people who are having trouble. Hopefully, this helps give them a little bit more of that
Yeah.
balance, not more trouble.
Yeah, yeah. More balance. Yeah.
Yeah.
What actually helped me with saying that this thing should wait, or like I will finish something like tomorrow, is actually putting a time slots for everything. Like
Hmm.
I will have a dinner, right? So I'm putting time slot in my calendar. That now it sounds kind of silly from like one point of view, but when you work from home, you have to do that at least until you build the habit, right? So
Yeah.
you're saying, okay, I'm just doing groceries, and like will have like half an hour just to go to like buy some groceries, right, or an hour. You
Hmm.
put the time slot in your calendar, and you treat it as a meeting, right? And then
Yeah.
you just put a time slot. Okay, I'm working till 11 p.m. or 10 p.m. or whatsoever. Like what time works for you, right? And then
Hmm.
you just, okay, I'm off. Like I finished
Yeah.
the work that I supposed to do. Now, for me, what helped also is because I'm like constantly doing like pet projects and experimenting all the mad science thing, right?
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
So I usually put also like time slots. Like today I'm doing some mad things, right? Like flying drones with my mind, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, everything can wait. I need
That's
to
good.
fly a drone with my mind, right?
And that's so good. Sometimes the best rest is different work as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
And I think that it's a fair thing for you to flex your muscles and give yourself a day off of rest from one thing to work on the next thing.
yeah,
Um, it's a very valuable setup to be able to hit snooze on each of these whenever you need to. The gotcha here, I'll say, is that you can't hit snooze on people. I
Yeah.
think that that's the one spot where you might be like a boss or like a request or some kind of technical task. I feel like it's important. But when you have a person who's frustrated or upset or anything like that, what's funny is in a co-working or like environment, you run into that person, and these things have a natural way of saying, "Well, every time I go get milk or water, I don't want to see these dirty looks, so we need to have this conversation." Um, but in remote work, if a person is upset or you have some kind of difficulty or something like that, you don't get those. As a matter of fact, it becomes more silent. And so I'd say that one of the key things here is person to person communication. That's the one thing I would say, okay, if you have to take an extra call or if you have to check something out, just to make sure people are good and that they're happy. And that's part of why that's one of our core values at Infinite Red. It's because we know how important that really is, especially in remote work. And I think that these high bandwidth communications, like we're doing right
Yeah.
here, are exactly perfect for that, and it helps get really interesting, creative information and excellent thoughts out there for everybody.
Yeah, that actually like kind of answers the question that I want you to ask about, like how do you still manage human like interaction, right? Because lots of people are like, I've seen lots of people switch to remote work and they like all over Slack, but they don't see each other faces, right? And
Yeah.
at some point, whenever you just like switch to remote work is fine, but like a month, 2, 3 months goes on, and suddenly you start to feel lonely. You're alone. You
Hmm.
don't have human interactions and so on, and that's why it's really important to have these like face-to-face interactions with people, not necessarily related to work, right? So,
Yeah.
you in Infinite Rise specifically, you have these like. Can you tell us a little bit more about like this clue game that you have and
Oh
all the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
rooms and
Well, we do.
everything?
We constantly are trying to figure out ways to interact socially. We have blog posts about those at shift.infinite.red. You can see a bunch of them. Funny enough, the exact thing you're talking about, where you're talking to people all day, but you're just starting to feel like this weird distance. I used to call quarantine fever because I was like, it's not cabin fever. You can go out there. It's
Yeah,
quarantine fever. And now I think like,
which is now
wow,
actually quarantine
it's
fever.
actually
Yeah.
quarantine fever. So don't know if I should change the term or if it just proves it accurate. But we have a group of people who come up with awesome ideas. And for instance, one of the people, Justin Husky, came up with the idea of us all watching a movie at the same time, which is a lot of fun. We did a movie night where actually the people who went to movie night got Disney Plus for free from the company, and we watched Home Alone. We've
Nice.
also played online games. I don't know. Have you ever heard of Quiplash?
Nope.
Quiplash is a really simple, fun game. We played it in person at an all treat once. An all treat is what we call our annual meetup, where we just kind of fly everybody together to be next to each other and make sure that people actually exist and we're not all robots, right? And so we played Quiplash, but what's funny is it's such a fun game, and you could play it over Zoom. So it's actually a
Nice.
really fun idea of like, you don't have to really know everybody because it's a little bit like getting to know everybody's sense of humor. It's a fun game. It's a laughing kind of game, and it's where the most popular answers get selected. Sort of like Cards Against Humanity, but way less dirty.
Mm. We actually played Code Names, I think 2 days ago, over Zoom
Nice.
with breakout rooms and everything. But it's yeah, like you have two teams, right? In Code Names, so you have like
Yeah.
breakout room for one team and breakout room for
Nice.
second, and yeah, it's not like as in real life, but I mean,
Yeah.
we even had
Well,
the
yeah.
kids Zoom call when our kids were on Zoom call.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean there's a bunch, and the thing is it's not exactly like going out with beers with the coworkers at all. And that is different. So if you want exactly that, this isn't going to replace it. But when we did the movie night, our CTO Jamin was watching Home Alone, and he had his daughters with him, And it was just really awesome. And Darren was there, and he had his daughter with him, and they were just watching these fantastic shows, and we were just hearing them laugh. I was like, it's kind of
Yeah.
like a little bit more fun, and it was really nice to be around our coworkers like that. Sure, we're not going to go out to have a pint and chat about, you know, how much the CEO's joke is funny or not funny. Sure, um, but I feel like that's not exactly what this is meant to do. We find these different interactions. I actually have a really fun idea lately called Random Fest. It's like Secret Santa, but
Hmm.
essentially we're going to everybody's going to mail each other something in the mail. Of course, you're going to have to spray it down and sanitize it right now. But you could send them stickers, pins, a funny note, some toilet paper, whatever you want to do. And so we're just going to kind of, it's like going to be like the holidays in, July, where we're just going to send some gifts to each
Yeah.
other. And I think it's a really fun endeavor.
Yeah.
So we come up with a lot of ideas, and I would love, that's a good Twitter thread. We should come up with a
Yeah,
Twitter
we
thread,
should like
post your
continue.
remote work fun stuff.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Nice.
And yeah, like speaking of remote work in general and remote trainings and all these like
Hmm.
remote kind of stuff, right? And the main point, like you mentioned it several times, it's different, right? And
Oh yeah.
it's let's say like these remote retreats or remote like gatherings that you
Hmm.
have, right? So imagine that you have like on-site gathering like whenever you work in the office, and you will have at least 30% of people they don't want to go there, right? So they cannot take
Hmm.
their families there, they not really
Right.
enjoying that, it's like a mandatory thing and so on. And here it's on Zoom, so you can join with your family, you can
Hmm.
be there like halfway there, halfway like with your family, and yeah, it works pretty well. Yeah. And
It's so true because we have one coworker. Hell, I'll call him out, Jed. When we have during work hours social events, he's very, very dependable. It's amazing. He shows up with a smile, laugh, and a joke, and we have a lot of fun. And if you go after work hour event, as soon as it goes after, and we all have those friends, right? It's just
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
like how life is. He belongs to his family, and fair enough. But that's the cool thing, I'd say, is that there's some flexibility that comes in with remote work, where if you need to have a de-stressing game of, I don't know, Rocket League, Team Fortress 2, or something like that, and your schedule allows it, and you're not, making sure you're not overworking yourself or anything like that. That's a perfect way to relax.
yeah.
Something that generally is very looked down upon at an office, where they are paying you for your time, not your quality of work.
Yeah, and speaking of that, lots of companies they invest in these things like full fridges and coffee machines and stuff like that,
Yes.
and that's not what people want, right? People want like
Yeah.
freedom of choice what they do with their free time. They don't want to commute. They will be more effective, more productive that way. Like
Yeah.
imagine the same like 11 hours if you just take 3 of these hours of like commuting and so on, and the person will just learn courses on Coursera like you did,
Yeah.
or like
Yeah.
bunch of other people are doing, and people will be like more professional. They will be more happy
Hmm.
in general, right? Uh,
Yeah, I mean, sure, there's free bags of chips in the workroom and free Cliff Bars or something like
yeah,
that. But is that worth um, you not controlling your time? I think that this is the sign of the junior slash senior of whatever, junior slash senior dev, designer, engineer, just manager, that when you don't have a clear image in your head, you crave that structure. And you know what? Someone telling you you have to be here, you have to do that, and you have here's your treats. You can choose from these three treats on the top aisle.
yeah,
You can do these things. By the way, as many sodas as you want. It's these ones that are chosen, and for a while, that's amazing. I think people coming straight out of college, back when developers used to come out of college, I guess, or, or like for a while, it's a little bit of this this sort of order of being part of something.
Yeah.
And then at some point, you know what makes you happy. And I think that's where really remote work shines. And some people try to do remote work and they need to be told, when to work, where to go, and what to
Yeah.
do. And it doesn't fix it by going to a co-working space or something like that. And sure enough, that's totally okay. There are a lot of places that really love you to go sit in a seat in a cube, and that's the only way that they know that you're being productive or that they can tell you what to do. I think that what's great about this is if you had that inkling to say, no, I don't want to go to the fridge and have a half-eaten sandwich and have to go find out. I don't want to. I want to watch The Office, not live in it. Right?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's the real key here. And if you want to watch The Office, not live in it, remote work's your friend.
Yeah, but it brings me to another. Like I'm thinking of like why people are not switching like to remote work, like companies. Why not switching? I think
Hmm.
the major problem here is kind of trust that works both ways,
Yeah.
because sometimes and it comes from industrial age when we have like all these factories like built in. People are kind of
Hmm.
as held inside the factory. They doing their work. They have managers, supervisors, and so
Yes.
on. And it comes from that point. We're not in industrial age anymore, at
Right.
least
Your
like.
job's not to grab this
Yeah.
this gear wrench and like wind
Yeah.
it around and run the machine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, in a way, but like everything can be can be
Right.
everything can be done online right now. Now the
Uh,
problem is, and I'm not saying it's wrong. Like some companies, they just don't trust developers to do like
I know.
remote work, and it comes from several reasons. One of the reason is sometimes, and I, I'm not sure about the numbers, but I would say like in 50% of time, like 60% of time, I'm just like
Hmm.
uh, just
It's
throwing
good.
out a number, right?
70%
So
of statistics
70,
are made
yeah,
up on the spot
statistics
anyway.
and whatever. So so people just don't like communicate the work they do, right? And this is
Oh
another
yeah.
important thing.
Yeah.
And I would say one of the really great tips of how to like effectively build this trust, because you need to build this trust, right? You
Hmm. Hmm.
cannot expect that you start your work and the new
Hmm.
company and your manager will be like, oh, you just like do whatever you want, tell me like in a month that
Yeah.
everything is done. It won't work that way, right? So that's why
Correct.
we have these boards, we have like Scrum, we have all the tooling and
Yeah.
so on. But I would say whenever you work remotely, you need to
Hmm.
over communicate more
Yeah.
than you would have communicated while sitting in the office. Because if you sit in the office, your manager can always like walk by and look at what you're doing, and hopefully you're working, not playing GTA or something. And yeah, so whenever
That's
you
a
work
really good
remotely
point.
your manager cannot do that, like unless
Hmm.
you work in some like weird company that's spying over workers, which there are companies like that. I won't. Yeah, well, sometimes you have these like like just an environment that you need to connect to, well, they
Yeah.
log in everything like what worker does, and sometimes it's kind of weird, and it's not
Hmm.
building trust, do the other way around, right? But
Yeah, one of the things I'll say is that it that is so important. Your communication levels. So there's this thing that says every point you have. So you have IQ, which is your intelligence quotient. You have EQ, which
mhm,
is your emotional quotient. They said that every point you have in EQ results in something like $3,000 extra in salary.
mhm,
And I have to say that when I saw that statistic, some people were like, I don't know about that. I was like, in remote work, that's very true. How well you communicate? How reliable are you to show up to a client meeting? How prepared are you? How well do you present what you've been working on for a while? Because people don't walk past and they don't see that.
yeah,
Do you also understand that, you know, when you're working remote, time's not linear? If I drop 3 messages into Slack, I could say, this, and then the next part, and then the next part in 3 different channels. But you, Vlad, you might read it in reverse order. And if you read it in reverse order, you might start commenting on one before you actually have the full context. That is not only an exercise in how I should communicate and constantly providing context, but also how I should be understanding that you might have read it in a different order or not gotten to a particular part yet. People who aren't good communicators have a new strain in remote work. And I think that that's part of what you're saying here is that it's not that hard to work on it, but you have to. You
Yeah,
have to always work on it, no
it's a
matter how good you
skill.
are.
It's a
Yeah,
skill
it's a
that
skill.
that you need to develop, right? And you're saying like about the asynchrony of remote work, and sometimes
Hmm.
it's if you have a global company, sometimes you message something in one time zone, another person will see it in like 15 hours from that point. And
Yeah.
let's be honest, in a real like office environment, everyone will be pissed off if you will ask something and person will reply in 15 hours, right? It won't work
Right.
that way. But whenever you're dealing with global distributed companies, that's really
Hmm.
true. And you need to like synchronize between these distributed teams. You need to synchronize between distributed like developers working, or not only developers in general, like everyone
Hmm.
working in this kind of environment. And this is also a challenge. It's a challenge to manage, right?
Yeah.
Which actually brings me to another point, right? So like, how do you, let's say a new person comes in, right, and start
Yeah.
working remotely, and well, I know like in Infinite Red you have all these like cool techniques that, that you do
Yeah.
and so on. So can you share like what is the tip for the manager? Let's say you want to build
Hmm.
this trust, right? But you want the person to trust yourself enough to the point that he will over communicate and he will, will
Hmm.
trust you to be aware of, let's say, his family issues if he has them, or be aware of his free time.
Yeah.
And how do you build this kind of trust in like team environment?
Well, I'll say from a managerial point of view, and maybe that'll be the correct way to
Yeah.
talk about this because this is what people maybe grab it. I think that people gravitate towards this anyway and say that one, it's just like having a conference at first. And so we throw the React Native conference, not this year, but
Hmm.
we throw the React Native conference. And one of the things that happens is it has to be welcoming. It has to be facilitating to conversation. If the only people you see speaking are people of a certain category, and people of a certain power dynamic, then you expect that to be how it goes going forward. So, inviting conversation, inviting actual communication is the first part of it. Being inviting is a key part of it here. We have done some pretty cool stuff with our all team meetings lately. Everybody's not muted. We try to encourage people to speak more. It's a really cool initiative. And then we've always had this thing I run called the bulletin board, where you have an opportunity to talk about something that's not work related at all.
Hmm.
And we try to get as many people, perhaps who don't have anything else to talk about, just to talk about themselves for a moment, because I think that's probably one of the easiest things for people. So I'd say the first aspect of that is being inviting. And the second part is a leadership tactic I learned from our CEO, Todd Worth, where he generally will place a problem in front of someone, and it's up to them to go ahead and solve it. It's a moat for them to cross. And if they cross it, then they've grown as a person and they've grown in their communication. And I think that's a great thing. But you have to have someone who has all their stuff together in order to present these small, surmountable problems. And then if the person can't cross that moat, if the person can't actually achieve this, well, then that's what they should be working on next. And that's what us as a leadership team should be helping them work on next. So I'd say that part of the methodology that we have here is you need one, a clear path to a destination forward so we can have people work together. And two, people who care enough to go ahead and watch a person try to run that marathon themselves and then be there with with whatever kind of support they can along the way. And that works specifically with remote building trust. If you've presented a person with a more difficult client, a more difficult project, something where you're like, look, this is a mess, and then they spin it into gold. You've basically given them the opportunity to prove that they are extremely trustable. But you don't start off with handing them the worst client and say,
Yeah.
welcome to the company. Boom. Good
Yeah.
luck. This person who hasn't contacted us in 3 weeks, we want you to have this done next week. And so that's honestly, I think that comes from leadership. I think the best way to build trust starts with leadership and goes on from there.
Yeah. Actually, we have Todd here in chat.
Uh-oh. Oh no, what's he saying about me?
No, he said that it's him. Okay.
Okay, good.
And yeah, speaking of leadership, so I don't remember who is saying that, but that's the difference of like how do you differentiate the person who is a leader, right, from the person that just a leader and the boss, right, and effectively
Yeah, not always the same.
effectively every boss should be a leader, right? But not usually that's the case. So leader basically gives you an opportunity to grow, and
Yes.
he basically leads you to this opportunity. That's at least what I think what
Yeah.
leadership is, right? And this is like
Yeah.
really important. And I really like you kind of explain how to manage like all these like distributed teams, all these remote teams,
Mhm.
and hopefully it will help people as well.
Yeah, I'll say that there's a difference between a leader and a coach. You probably hear this 100 times, or maybe this is the first time hearing it. Um, you can lead a large set of people. You can kind of only coach a few people,
Yeah.
in my opinion. And so it's important for you to identify where your time is best illustrated towards coaching people, and while you're leading everyone.
Yeah, that's a quote.
All right, yeah,
Yeah.
we'll tweet it out afterward.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, cool. So I think we close into the end of this broadcast. So several other things that so I asked you already about the kids and me putting the heavy punching bag, barricading myself out. And well, it helps, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, apart from that, this was just sort of a joke. It's the truth, but it's kind of hilarious truth.
Yeah.
But I would say, like, I think if I would give a good example for my kids, like being working remote, and
Mhm.
I think it's really important to also educate our kids to work
Yeah.
remotely, because that's where we are shifting. And
Mm-hmm.
sadly, the world won't be the same place after all of these. Hopefully, we will go through all of the coronavirus thing, but
Mm-hmm.
it's already shifting, and remote work will be more dominant. And we need to
Mm-hmm.
educate our kids that it's also a thing. And you see, I have Zoom
Yeah.
calls of my kids with their friends, right? But yeah, I'm thinking of like the takeaway of our discussion, how I would educate
Yeah.
my kids to being proactive, like trying to, even if they cannot socialize with their friends, trying to socialize over like remotely, trying
Mm-hmm.
to respect each other time, right? Respect each
Yes.
other like framework which every one of us like sets up. So what would
Mm-hmm.
your advice will be to the
Mm-hmm.
kind of young or not so young parents to educate their kids,
Yeah.
and how you think of educating your own daughter?
Well, I'll tell you, I think that everybody's getting a big education right now.
Yeah.
Companies have, I'll start from the top down. People who are brand new to this, they're like, I don't even know how to work with remote. And a lot of them are getting a big shock through this. I'll say that for them, there's a lot of support. If you have a dev team and you've never worked with people remote, reach out to people who do remote, like Vlad and I. And we've trained people
Yeah.
remotely. We've worked with people via remote, and we can kind of catch and sniff out a few things ahead of time. So I say if your company is looking for sort of some guidance on this, reach out to people. Like I said, humanity is key in being remote. So having some remote workers kind of show you how they do things is a great opportunity. And then it kind of comes down from there into high school kids trying to learn how to do these kinds of things. And honestly, I think the high school kids are doing better than most people anyway. They have a sense of
It's a good point.
adaptability and humor that that lends itself to, like you've changed your background here in a fantastic sort of theme centric item. That's exactly what high school Gant would have done. I probably would have spent a week on it, because when you're in high school, that's what you do.
Yeah.
You're trying to figure out how to interact with people, and they probably have a bunch of websites and entertaining aspects that we could learn from. And then I'd say that the last piece of that, when educating this with children, I'd say that interactions are forever at a core for a child. And I think that they're learning how to influence the world around them. And us, it's important to make sure that there's this great blog article where this person was saying, like, Alexa was corrupting his child because she would just tell it, do this, do that, not saying please, and
Mm.
not actually like respecting manners. And I think that what's great is that we identify those things, and we kind of at our core, we look at how we're going to influence the world around us. And that's exactly what goes through all of us. So for me, um, with my family, we're just exploring, but a really connecting, the connective tissue here is how can we enrich our lives and enrich the people around us.
Yeah, that's a good point. And probably at some point in the future, well, we already can have these like meetings in VR and so on. And
Yeah,
the weird thing is like everyone was talking about like VR being a niche thing because it's just for entertainment, and AR will be
yeah.
like more mainstream. But here we go. Probably VR will be in the first place, at
I
least
want my
for.
VR cameras now.
Yeah. Well, actually, there are like I wanted to do a meeting in VR, but yeah, I'm like there's not enough people with headsets, so yeah,
We'll figure it out.
yeah, we'll figure this out for sure. Um, cool. Yeah. So we are coming close to the end of the stream, so
Hmm.
I think we should do this more often. Like
Yeah.
this kind of remote talks and so on.
Well,
And
media is such a fantastic opportunity for remote work.
yeah,
I'd be happy to come on here anytime. Our CTO would come on here. If you really want to have a great laugh, have Todd on here.
yeah.
He's hilarious. So I'd say, like, you could have people from Infinite Red come visit and talk about remote work,
Yeah.
because that's exactly what we're doing all day anyway. We're on video talking about work. So
Yeah.
it's just part of our day.
Yes, I probably shouldn't like announce that yet because I mean I just bought domain like a couple of hours ago, but so I want to start this
Nice.
initiative called like Remote Tech Talks, and yeah,
Nice.
probably like I don't have any agenda apart from just being remote talk about tech, everything, right?
That's good. It's a
So
good title then.
yeah, I mean I have the domain, right?
That's
So
good. Go grab the Twitter and the NPM package while you're out there. A
yeah,
few other
yeah.
things.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, we'll probably be doing that
Mhm.
quite a lot. And to our viewers, regarding remote work, if you have questions whatsoever, you can
Mhm.
reach out to like anyone, literally from Infinite Red. You can reach out to
Yeah.
me. You can reach out to a bunch of other people working remote. Speaking of like training remote, I actually
Hmm.
did bunch of like remote workshops, which is like remote workshop for how to work remotely. Which is kind of yeah weird
That's
naming.
awesome.
I still like figuring out the name, but yeah.
Remote workshops for how to do remote work. I love it.
How would you name that? Remote workshop? No, you wouldn't name it that.
Remote squared.
Remote. Yeah,
No.
yeah. something. Yeah, remote workshop for remote workers working
Yeah.
remotely.
Well, you know what? Just ask Twitter; they'll answer it for you.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I had an idea. I asked, and I had like, "Oh, which one of these 4 things is best?" And then Twitter just was like, "None of those 4. This is your answer." I was like, "Thank you, Twitter.
Yeah,
Always
well,
better
I
than
actually
the first
asked last week about how I should name my podcast, and I got a bunch of answers like name it Call Vlad something, and it's like, no, I won't go with this name. I mean, come on, there is
Yeah.
some level of jokes.
Yeah. So there are a few non-serious people on Twitter, I've heard.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway,
Awesome.
we're coming to the end of the stream. Thanks so much for joining. And
anytime.
yeah, hopefully, like I will spin this like remote tech talks, and I will see you there as a panelist if you'll have time.
Absolutely.
That will be cool.
Absolutely.
I still need to figure out how do I do all overlays with like bunch of people talking because. Yeah.
Well, as you can see, I'm really good. I have this overlay behind me. It looks like a really messy office. So
Yeah.
you want some lessons on how?
Yeah,
I
your
can do
green
that.
screen is amazing, and
It is very good. You can see it's even picked up the strands of my hair.
Yeah.
It looks like I've actually got a bookshelf. It's weird.
You know, actually, you can do a video of yourself, right? And then you can put it as virtual background, and you
This
can
is so
just
meta.
basically what you can do, and there are a bunch of like tweets about that. So what you can do, you like record a video of yourself, just like looking at the screen and just nodding and just like yeah, and you just walk out of the frame. And then you just attend the meeting like that.
Okay, maybe I should take a photo and just hold my phone up and like I'm still in the meeting.
Yeah.
It's a good plan. I'll figure out a couple ways to do it.
Just hilarious plan. Don't do that. After all, it's about like remote working, not about like how you hack remote working. If not for not working, you should work remotely.
Yeah,
And,
we're talking about building trust. So that
yeah,
is definitely
that's
not. Ways to not build trust would be a hilarious video cast, though. So maybe save it for that.
Yeah, it's like this repo that you have with the useless things, right?
Oh yes.
With all the like blinking elements and so on. You probably should share that on the like the thread for the like, Twitter.
I'll definitely do
that. Yeah. Cool. Okay, thanks, man, for joining,
awesome.
and talk to you later. And everyone, for all our watchers, all our viewers, these kind of streams will be kind of on a weekly basis. I'm not sure if a ISP will be, working down, and you never know these days. So last week I wanted to stream something. My ISP was down for like a day or so, and
well, everybody's streaming now, so we're about to find out if the package of internet that we bought is real.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm seeing good stats for at least in Streamlabs, and like
that's good.
Yeah, but I'm streaming to like 5 platforms, so I'm not sure if we're streaming at all. Maybe we're just having a Zoom call, nothing is streaming.
Yeah, maybe we have each person's getting 1/5 of the frames,
maybe,
and it's just like a great experience.
But anyway, I have these like Zoom call recording, so we'll see how it goes. Maybe I will push it as as a podcast. It can be as a podcast as well. So
yeah. Well, if it's on a podcast, I apologize for the mansion behind me and all the live lion and all the other things that I have.
A little bit of visualization won't hurt anyone.
Yeah.
And
those
I'm
are actually
in
their
space.
podcast people.
Yeah.
Not in space. Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we should probably end this stream because it's just will be like 1 hour more of laughs, and I think like both of us have work meetings to attend, so
probably.
Yeah. So see you around, and thanks for joining us, and thanks for everyone watching. Bye bye.